This week on The Impact, an antique bridge with an earthquake coming.
Our infrastructure in so many areas is failing.
A low carbon fuel standard with a catch.
It was necessary to gain support in the Senate.
Why a revenue package with a gas tax increase is tied to it all.
At least a 5-cent a gallon increase.
Buckle up for the transportation funding debate. Hear from leaders in the House.
And I don't think a transportation package has ever been done in a 60-day session.
And the Senate.
They've not only said, well, you're going to get this percentage of money, but it's all got to go to multimodal. That's where I have some objection.
About what will happen with the price of gas.
Much less is known about the climate cap and invest legislation because it's only been done in California.
It's not going to be long before we're going to see $5 a gallon gas. It's pushing that in California.
And how the state could find new ways to charge by the mile.
We need to look at road usage charge, set up a system that gets away from gas taxes. You know, we all want fuel efficiency and it's great for the planet, but it's not great for the transportation budget.
That's all coming up on The Impact.
From Olympia, an in-depth look at decisions at the state capitol and how they impact you. This is The Impact.
Hello and welcome to The Impact. I'm Mike McClanahan. Bare bones. That's how some transportation leaders in the state legislature described the $11 billion transportation budget approved last month. It does invest in road and bridge maintenance. It also allows previously approved projects to stay on track. And it puts a significant amount of money towards replacing culverts that block fish passageways as mandated by the federal government. However, it doesn't cover the cost of replacing the 100-year-old Columbia River Bridge connecting Portland to Vancouver, which could be at risk during a major earthquake. It also doesn't address what transportation leaders see as a looming problem: the shrinking pool of gasoline tax revenue that will create a bigger and bigger shortfall over time as electric vehicles, extremely fuel efficient, and hybrid vehicles make up a bigger share of the total vehicle pool in the state. Now, fuel tax is the primary source of funding for road and bridge construction and maintenance around Washington. And two of the governor's signature policy wins are linked to it: the low carbon fuel standard and the cap and trade or cap and invest scheme outlined by the Climate Commitment Act will only take effect once a transportation revenue package with at least a 5-cent per gallon gas tax increase is approved by lawmakers. The question is, when will that happen? Joining me now, House Transportation Committee Chair Representative Jake Fye of Tacoma and Ranking Republican Member Representative Andrew Barkis of Olympia. Thank you both for your time today. First, the big question I think a lot of people are asking: will there be a special session to address transportation funding this year? Representative Fye, what's your take?
Well, I think that this is largely going to depend at this point on the timing at the federal level of any kind of proposed infrastructure package. And the reason I say that is because the hardest part of putting together a package is on the revenue side. And if there are resources from the federal government that have been talked about, there's a lot of discussion at the federal level to address transportation needs. That certainly I would think would drive a special session. But we're going to be working together and to determine what lessons we've learned from the previous session and what adjustments we might make to the proposals that have been out there already.
Well, what do you think about that, Representative Barkis?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. I think the biggest lesson is we need to work together. This has been pretty much a partisan package, although I will say the chair and I have been working together in the conversation around this for over a year. But we'll need to be at the table. I'll need to be at the table. We'll need to be talking soon if, in fact, we are going to have a call for a special session. Of course, that decision lies with the majority. But I am willing to sit down if that comes up. The challenge is, of course, next year is a short session, and I don't think a transportation package has ever been done in a 60-day session with everything else that we'll be dealing with. So if we are going to consider that, we would need to have more time to do that, starting fairly soon.
So what transportation projects might get prioritized in a new package? We've heard talk about the U.S. to trestle. There's the I-5 Columbia River Bridge. There's ever-present interstate repair, bridge needs. Representative Fye, if you could quickly talk about some of the priorities that might be funded.
Well, I think you've covered some of them. What I would add to what you've said, Mike, is that we still have the mandate to comply with the federal Supreme Court ruling on culverts, and that's still over $2 billion worth of investments that's necessary. And I don't want people to forget about the fact that we've neglected our preservation and maintenance for so long, and all that delay in doing what needs to be done in real time, keeping what we have in good shape, causes more expense later on. So preservation and maintenance, in addition to what you've stated, I think are very important for us to consider in any transportation package.
Representative Barkis?
Well, the chair has pretty much covered it. And the big one is, of course, the Columbia River crossing, the I-5 crossing has been, on the radar for over 10 years now. Of course, Highway 2 and many other projects that need to be addressed, including the culverts. But I would echo maintenance and preservation being one of the top priorities that has to fit into the conversation when it comes to any kind of a revenue package. Dealing with what we currently have in the state of Washington that needs to be taken care of. Our infrastructure in so many areas is failing, and there is a huge backlog. We've done a good job, I would say, in our budgeting over the last several years, especially dealing with the challenges to make sure that maintenance and preservation was dealt with. But in the grand scheme of things, in the bigger scope, that definitely has to be part of the conversation. And I would say that's why, the chair's proposal was a little different, because it didn't specifically, outside of a couple main projects, outline what those, like a project list. We've been gathering data for the last 2 years on the needs of the state with relation to projects, district by district. So we have a really good understanding of what the need is in the state of Washington.
Okay, so why were the environmental policies, the low carbon fuel standard and the cap and invest or cap and trade program tied to the passage of a transportation package that includes a gas tax increase? Let's get some specificity if we can. Representative Fye.
Well, both the low carbon fuel standard and the Climate Commitment Act call for a transportation package with at least a 5-cent a gallon increase to the price of gasoline for revenues by January 1st, 2022, which is a very strange time, I guess, in many respects, because it comes before the normal odd-numbered years session. But it is what it is, and that was what the agreement was to move forward. And so we're going to try to work with that time frame, but it isn't the standard kind of time frame that we work with to get this accomplished. But as you may recall, years ago in the 2015 package, there was an issue, what was called the poison pill, that if a low carbon related fuel standard was passed, then all the money related to multimodal would go to road projects. So we've had these contingencies before, and that'll be a challenge that we'll just have to deal with and work through.
Representative Barkis, what's your take?
Well, it was an interesting year. I mean, these are two major climate policies that the governor has been pushing. The majority's been, after for many, many years. And I know the pushback was what the impact of those are going to be on the cost of gasoline. And, when you're talking about a revenue package, whether it's a gas tax or any other fees that were proposed in order to facilitate a revenue package, this is just an add-on. So, I know that from the Senate position, a lot of the conversation circled around any type of carbon plan. Any type of plan had to have some kind of a revenue benefit to future transportation issues, because the transportation budget has very limited funding resources. And so adding these climate policies on without having that nexus to transportation, but it was strange. The last couple of days of session, the whole session was strange, but the last couple of days with these policies coming forward in the agreement and this language tying these bills' implementation into a revenue package, so it sets the table for that. It's concerning for us. I mean, both these policies were, it's no secret, we were very opposed to the policies for a myriad of reasons, but I think the primary one is just the potential for the increase in cost of fuel for the people of Washington State. So we want to make sure that if there is going to be that we have some revenue coming in that will have a benefit for the people of the state of Washington.
So just to clarify, I want to go back. So was this necessary to gain support in the Senate, tying these together?
It was necessary to gain support in the Senate.
So
my understanding.
Absolutely. I mean, Chair Hobbs made no point. He was very vocal about his position when it came to these carbon policies, and he's been pushing his Ford Washington plan for a couple of years now, and it had this tie-in, and there was always this battle on what was going to be, and the low carbon fuel standard has not passed for the last couple of years. So, the fact that they got both policies across the finish line and signed into law is a pretty big deal. And I'm sure that this was part of the agreement with the majority on how to get this passed in order to do what needed to be done.
Okay, so we've got just a little bit over 2 minutes left. Could you give us a realistic estimate of what you think the combination of these policies plus, say, a 5-cent tax per gallon on gasoline increase would do to the cost of a gallon of gas? We've heard wildly ranging estimates. Representative Fye, do you have a clear picture of how much this might increase?
So
Gasoline.
I think much less is known about the climate cap and invest legislation because it's only been done in California, and this is really only the second state in the country, I believe, that's done this. And I think in the case of both of these bills, the actual implementation is kind of spread out. So I think the short term may not be so dramatic from the low carbon fuel standard because that is delayed in timing as well. But I would just note, Mike, we've had substantial increases in the price of gasoline in the last couple of years that have nothing to do with gas taxes, just happen to deal with the whole supply issue across the country. So when you take that into account, yes, these will impact it, but the marketplace impacts gasoline prices as well. And like I said, these both have kind of delayed implementation, so we'll see how that impact how that takes place exactly.
Representative Barkis, just over 20 seconds. What's your take on this?
Yeah, very concerning. Gas is about to hit $4 a gallon just because of the market, just like the chair said. But our estimations are anywhere from 40 to 60 cents per policy. Could be. That would be over $1 before we even do any of the other increases. So any negotiations we have and any conversations with regards to a revenue package will have to take that into consideration because of the impact it will have on the people of the state. It's not going to be long before we're going to see $5 a gallon gas. It's pushing that in California. So this is going to be challenging moving forward on what type of revenue we're able to put together in order to take care of the transportation needs in this state.
Well, we're out of time. There are a lot of other policy areas we could discuss. So we'll probably have to do this again later this year, potentially, especially if there's a special session or something. Again, thank you for your time, Representative Fye, Representative Barkis. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Multiple transportation leaders in the legislature released their own transportation revenue proposals, but Senate Transportation Chair Steve Hobbs has been a major driving force in this discussion. He's also played a key role in the outcome of high-profile bills that are now tied to a transportation revenue plan. Joining me now, Senate Transportation Committee Chair, Democratic Senator Steve Hobbs of Lake Stevens, and Ranking Republican Member, Senator Curtis King of Yakima. So first question for Senator Hobbs, why were the environmental policies, the low carbon fuel standard and cap and trade or cap and invest program tied to the passage of a transportation revenue package with at least a 5-cent gas tax increase? And to piggyback on that, will there be a special session?
So first of all, there's many of us that believe who believe in the needs of transportation, like preservation and maintenance. The need that we need to do another package. We believe that carbon is tied to all that, and so I know in the past there's been all these carbon policies that have been out there, but none of them would give any resources to transportation, even though transportation makes up a large chunk of of that carbon pricing. And so there's several of us that decided that we were not going to vote for any carbon pricing or any carbon policy unless it's tied to transportation. And the reason why we had the 5-cent gas tax language in there was so that you couldn't enact any of those policies unless you passed a transportation package.
Senator King, what's your perspective?
Well, I mean, I agree to some degree with Senator Hobbs. There should be some funding out of those packages that come to transportation. And as he said, that wasn't happening. And so, you know, I applaud him for tying it together. But you know, it's just like what we've done with cap and trade. They've not only said, well, you're going to get this percentage of money, but it's all got to go to multimodal. That's where I have some objections as to how that all came down. So.
And in terms of what happens if there isn't a revenue package and there isn't a gas tax increase by the January deadline, do those two policies just go away, the low carbon fuel standard and the carbon cap program? Senator Hobbs?
No. I mean, those are kind of enduring language. So it doesn't take effect until there is a transportation package that passes a gas tax of 5 cents. So there's no January deadline or anything like that. It's just there until a transportation package is passed.
And just to piggyback on that, what is the sense of urgency for passing a transportation revenue package? I know you've been working on Forward Washington.
Well, there's. Oh.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, certainly. No, there is urgency to pass a transportation package, but we have to do it right. And so the pause that you're seeing right now is really driven by what's going on in Washington, D.C. Like there's going to be, and it looks like there will be, a federal infrastructure package on it. Then what we need to do is wait and see what comes out of Washington, D.C., and then we can overlay our package on top of that. So we don't have to, we don't have to do so much revenue, or we don't have to spend so much. So we can scale it to meet what the federal resources bring to our state.
So I want to switch the order for this next question. And Senator King, in your opinion, what are the most important transportation projects that need to be funded? If you could prioritize a couple of projects or a few different areas, what would you prioritize?
Well, I would start off with maintenance and preservation. We have underfunded that area for years, and it's starting to catch up with us. So I would say maintenance and preservation. DOT probably has a little different interpretation of how they define preservation than I would, but still that's where we need to focus most of our money, because we got to maintain our roads, our bridges, our highways. The other would be to address the culvert issue, which is like a $3 billion hit that is sitting there, that by court order we have to have pretty well accomplished by 2030. We need to start addressing that at a higher level.
And Senator Hobbs, what would you prioritize?
Oh, Senator King actually just took my words away. He's absolutely right. Maintenance and preservation is a huge problem in our state, and the culverts are hanging over our head like a fiscal time bomb. And those are huge priorities that we have to fix.
When you look at how much of the money that comes into transportation is already committed towards bonds for projects that may already be underway or maybe near completion or even have been finished, how critical is the need for new revenue, and what's the best way to get that?
Certainly, I think you're seeing it already. We're looking at carbon pricing as a potential source of revenue. Also, we need to look at road usage charge, get away from, or set up a system that gets away from gas taxes and pays per mile. We don't want to layer a gas tax and a per mile on vehicles that run on gas, but certainly on the electric vehicles, we had a proposal, Senator Saldani and I, that was going to do that to just electric vehicles. I think that's a good start, but we're having declining gas tax revenues, and that's a problem. And we all want fuel efficiency, and it's great for the planet, but it's not great for the transportation budget.
Senator King, what's your perspective?
Well, I think we definitely need new revenue. We need more revenue. I would say I don't know that it needs to be new revenue. We have proposed, several of us have proposed over the last 3 or 4 years that all or some of the sales tax on cars and trucks come to transportation. When you have a budget that we had this year, which is increasing like 14.2 or 3%, to say that there isn't any money that we could take out of what now goes to the operating budget and sales tax on these cars and trucks, part of that should come back to transportation, because there's more of a nexus there than there is with the operating budget. But we could gain no traction with that, even though there were, as I say, there were additional monies available. Our revenues were above and beyond what was the expected. And then with the billions of dollars that came in from the feds, we could have easily done that and helped reduce the amount of money that we need to go, additional monies that we need to get from our citizens in regards to transportation. One thing I would say about RUC, and my only concern, I shouldn't say my only, but my biggest concern about RUC is right now gas tax, it costs about 0.5% to collect it. The RUC, they're estimating somewhere between 10 and 12%. So we're in the hole right from the get-go. And if they're telling me 10 and 12, it's probably more like 15 to 18.
So, Senator Hobbs, I want to get back to road usage charge, or RUC, in a second. But first, do you care to respond to the proposal about the vehicle sales tax transfer that Senator King referenced?
No, I mean, he's not wrong. It's just, how do you get it from the operating budget? That's the hard part. How do you get the votes? We have a proposal in Ford, Washington that has new car sales on electric vehicles. I think that's a good compromise and it's a good start, and I hope we can get that passed. Because eventually it's all going to be electric vehicles, or basically vehicles that are not running on gasoline. Let's do that. Let's push that when we do Ford, Washington. So yeah, I don't disagree with them on that.
So we've got just under 2 minutes. I just want to give you a heads up. Senator Hobbs, when you talk about a road usage charge, there are a couple of big questions pop out. The first one is, should the money be protected by the 18th Amendment? If it is in fact meant to replace gas tax revenue, should it be earmarked for roads and bridges? Transit advocates would argue no. What's your perspective?
I absolutely believe it should be 18th Amendment protected, because that's what we do with the gas tax. And we have to maintain our roads. We have to maintain our bridges. And with all due respect to the advocates out there, buses run on roads and we have to maintain them. They're falling apart. So there's other revenue sources that we can use for multimodal, and I will advocate for that and I'll push for those. But we really need to protect those monies for road usage charge, just like we protect the gas tax.
Okay, so I want one more question with Senator Hobbs, and I want to toss it to Senator King here. There has been discussion among some of the transportation planning agencies about using a road usage charge effectively as an omnipresent toll, to use congestion pricing to try to alleviate congestion or discourage driving on congested routes. What do you think about that concept?
I'm really not a fan right now. Can we just start the system now, and then we can talk about those other policy considerations later. That's
Okay.
where I am.
And with just under a minute left, Senator King, would you care to respond to that question and anything else that I didn't ask?
Well, I mean, I think I have the same concerns that Senator Hobbs has. You also, with RUC, we also have concerns about the privacy issue and all of that. Then the other concern that I have, and I'll be quick here, is that, we're talking about trying to track how many miles in a given county that is traveled in a given year. RUC will help you do that. And my concern is that then the government's going to come back to say to you, Yakima County, as an example, your people traveled 2 million miles. Now, if you want to get more funding from the state or get the same funding from the state, you have to figure out how you're going to reduce that by 10%. That's what I'm concerned.
Okay, Senator Hobbs, if you have closing thoughts, if you could wrap them up in 15 seconds.
Certainly, I'm dedicated to trying to get an infrastructure package out that works for all Washingtonians across the state. And I want to thank Senator King and being a partner, not just in that, but also in budgets that we've done in the past and connecting Washington. I feel we can do this. We can do this again. We can do this together is what I'm hoping for.
It's been the Transportation Chair and Ranking Member in the Senate. We appreciate your time. Thank you both, Senators.
Thank you.
Still ahead on The Impact. Should Washington reopen by June 15th no matter what? The details on a petition meant to make that happen. Stay with us. The Washington Hospitality Association is urging people to sign a petition demanding that Governor Jay Inslee reopen Washington fully by June 15th. The Hospitality Association represents businesses like restaurants and hotels. According to Hospitality Association President and CEO Anthony Anton, Washington is one of only 2 states without a target date to fully reopen by July 1st. The other is Hawaii. The June 15th date would put Washington on track to reopen with California. Well, that's all the time we've got for this week's show, but we really hope to see you back here next week for more in-depth interviews you won't find anywhere else. I'm Mike McClanahan. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.